The Galactic Concord had always been a delicate thing. An alliance of 12 very different alien species. It had survived 2 centuries through treaties, trade, and shared fear of war. But now, peace was crumbling. On one side stood the Zalari, Imperium, a proud and ruthless empire that believed in strength above all. On the other was the Varn Coalition, a growing force of independent systems united under a dream of expansion. Their borders had clashed, then their ships, and now war, felt inevitable. The Concord's council met behind closed doors, their voices tense, their options few. In desperation, they made a strange choice. They turned to the humans, newcomers, untested, unpredictable, not yet trusted, not yet understood. But they had sent word that they would help. And when the time came, they sent one man. He arrived. Quietly. No guards. No fanfare. Just one human in a long black coat stepping off a small shuttle. His name was Ambassador Jonas Rourke, a man with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. His file was short. A diplomat from Earth, known for resolving 2 planetary conflicts without bloodshed. Calm, polite, unshakable. The Concord didn't know what to make of him. Most alien ambassadors came with whole entourages, staff, security, and translators. Rourke came alone, carrying only a slim silver case and a quiet confidence. When he spoke, it was with careful words and a calm tone. He listened more than he talked, but every question he asked seemed to land exactly where it hurt. Some in the council thought he was harmless, just another soft-spoken human trying to play peacemaker in a galaxy full of larger forces. Others weren't so sure. There was something strange about him, something in the way he moved, as if he had walked through danger before and didn't fear it anymore. His eyes didn't blink much, and when he looked at you, you felt like he already knew more than you had told him. The Concord's high speaker, a tall creature with glassy skin named Vreth, watched Rourke carefully. "He's not what he seems," Vreth said in private. "He's too quiet." Still, the summit had to go forward. The council chose Nelgaris Prime as neutral ground, a station orbiting a quiet gas giant far from either power's territory. The Zalari and Varn delegates arrived with full escorts, armored ships patrolling nearby space. The tension in the air was thick. One wrong word, and thousands of lives could be lost. Rourke, meanwhile, observed everything. He asked questions that seemed simple but revealed cracks in both sides' stories. He noticed who sat where, who glanced at whom, and who spoke with too much certainty. He didn't raise his voice, but somehow people listened. At the welcoming dinner, when the servers offered drinks, Rourke simply smiled and asked for water. A few noticed that his glass stayed sealed until the others had sipped theirs. Later, as he walked through the station's upper corridors alone, a maintenance hatch behind him blew open in a burst of sparks and smoke. The blast should have knocked him down. But when the smoke cleared, Rourke stood untouched, eyes narrowed, scanning the shadows. No panic, no confusion, just cold awareness. Security rushed in, but he waved them off and continued on as if nothing had happened. Rumors began to spread. Who was this human, really? The Varn ambassador, a sly insectoid named Selek, muttered to his second-in-command. "He's not just a diplomat, he's something else." Even the Zalari, who feared little, began to whisper in private. The question wasn't whether Rourke was dangerous. The question was how much he was hiding. Behind the scenes, the Concord began to reevaluate. Had Earth sent a peacemaker or a warning? And still, Jonas Rourke said nothing. He simply prepared for the next meeting, placing a single data pad on the table in front of him. Whatever was on it, he hadn't shown anyone yet, but the look in his eyes said that when he did, everything might change. ChatGPT said, "Ambassador, Jonas Rourke arrived on Nelgaris Prime with quiet confidence, stepping off the sleek shuttle into the towering space station that orbited the distant gas giant. Nelgaris Prime was the chosen neutral ground, a place where 2 great factions, the ruthless Zalari Imperium and the ambitious Varn Coalition, had agreed to hold a summit to try and prevent all-out war. The room buzzed with tension, but behind, the formal smiles and diplomatic niceties, a darker plan brewed. Unknown to Rourke, both sides had secretly agreed on one thing. The human envoy had to be eliminated. They saw him as an unpredictable wild card. His presence threatened their plans and complicated their schemes. Killing him would send a clear message to Earth: stay out of the galaxy's affairs, or pay the price. On the surface, the summit proceeded as planned. The ceremonial dinner was a lavish event, attended by the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The table was filled with alien delicacies and sparkling drinks from every corner of space. When the serving drones brought a glass of wine to Rourke, the Zilari ambassador watched with a thinly veiled smile, confident the human would not notice the subtle poison slipped into the vintage. But Rourke didn't touch the glass. His eyes caught the faintest glimmer on the rim, a slight shimmer only someone trained to detect danger could see. Instead, he sipped water from a clean glass, untouched by the deadly trap. The Zilari's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Later, as Rourke walked through the wide, echoing corridors of the station, an explosion shattered the calm. A maintenance hatch behind him blew open with a roar, sending sparks and smoke into the air. Delegates ducked for cover, but when the smoke cleared, Rourke was there, standing tall and unharmed. His coat was dusted with ash, but he showed no sign of panic or injury. Security rushed forward, but he waved them off with a calm gesture, as if to say the danger was over. Still, the question on everyone's mind was how he survived what should have been a deadly blast. The answer became clear moments later, when a figure cloaked in shadows lunged at him with a plasma blade, silent, swift, and deadly. The assassin struck fast, aiming to end the envoy's life in a single move. But Rourke moved with terrifying calm and speed. In one fluid motion, he caught the glowing blade between his fingers, the plasma sizzling against his skin, and twisted the attacker's arm, disarming him without breaking stride. The assassin crumpled to the floor, stunned and powerless. Silence fell over the corridor. The watching aliens stared in disbelief. This was no ordinary diplomat. This was a trained operative, a fighter who combined precision, skill, and cold calculation. The air shifted. Suddenly, the envoy who had seemed quiet and unassuming revealed himself as something much more dangerous. The delegates whispered nervously, "Why would Earth send someone like this? What was the true purpose of their envoy? Was he a diplomat or a weapon disguised in human skin?" As the summit continued, the answer remained hidden behind Jonas Rourke's calm eyes. But one thing was certain: humanity's presence in galactic politics was no accident, and their envoy was prepared for war, even when speaking the language of peace. Every move he made, every look he gave, carried the weight of someone who was ready to fight not just with words but with deadly skill if necessary. Nelgaris Prime was no longer just neutral ground. It had become a battleground where diplomacy met deception, and the true nature of the human envoy began to unfold before the galaxy's eyes. After the failed attempts on his life, Ambassador Jonas Rourke did something unexpected. He didn't report back to Earth with warnings or calls for reinforcements. Instead, he vanished into the shadows of the political battlefield he had entered. But behind that silence was a different kind of war being fought. One not with guns or ships, but with secrets, lies, and careful moves that only a master strategist could pull off. Slowly, the factions that had come to Nelgaris Prime to negotiate peace found themselves turning on each other, not openly, but through whispers and hidden actions. It began with subtle leaks. Private conversations from Zilari commanders somehow made their way to the Varn leadership. Then, intercepted transmissions revealed false plans and betrayals. Supplies that should have reached key forces were delayed or sabotaged, weakening both sides in ways no one could trace back at first. The rumors Rourke planted seemed like chance, about corrupt officials, secret deals with unknown mercenaries, and betrayals within the highest ranks. These whispers grew louder, creating paranoia and distrust between allies and enemies alike. All of this was not random. Every move was precise, surgical. It was as if someone was playing a game of chess with entire fleets and armies as pieces, moving quietly, never rushing, never exposing themselves. While the galaxy watched the surface, the real battle was hidden in shadows and code, where Rourke held all the cards. In quiet moments, fragments of his past began to appear like flashbacks, revealing why Earth's diplomats were unlike any others in the galaxy. On Earth, diplomacy was never just about words or treaties. From a young age, those chosen to represent humanity were trained not only in languages and cultures, but in skills far beyond what most other species even imagined necessary for peacekeepers. They studied logic and psychology, yes, but also hand-to-hand combat, stealth, hacking, and military strategy. Their education was designed to prepare them for a truth few outsiders understood. Peace and war were two sides of the same coin for humans. They did not separate the two as alien powers did. For a human envoy, diplomacy was a battlefield, and every conversation could be a confrontation. Every handshake could hide a challenge. This dual nature made their diplomats dangerous opponents. To be a human representative meant being both a shield to protect and a sword ready to strike if needed. The conquered, initially skeptical of this approach, began to see the truth as more evidence surfaced. They realized that humans had never planned to be mere pawns in galactic politics. Unlike other species who sent peaceful negotiators or battle commanders separately, humans sent envoys who carried the full weight of their strength, intelligence, and will in one person. Their diplomacy was a performance, yes, but also a test of strength. If their words were ignored, they could turn to other means quietly and effectively. This was a new kind of power, one that made other species uneasy and confused. They could not categorize humanity with the usual labels of warrior, diplomat, or spy. Humans were all of these things at once. Their ambassadors did not just represent their government. They represented an entire species' survival instinct, sharpened over centuries of struggle on a harsh world. The more the Concord studied Rourke's actions, the more they understood that his mission was not just about peace talks. It was about reshaping the galaxy's balance of power, not with armies, but with influence and information. The Zalari and Varn, caught in webs of suspicion and betrayal, found their once unified fronts crumbling. Their leaders argued behind closed doors, questioning loyalties, fearing traitors in their ranks. This internal chaos brought the conflict to a dangerous point, but also opened a path toward a different kind of resolution. One led not by conquest, but by negotiation, forced through shared weakness. Jonas Rourke's silent campaign was pushing the two sides toward an uneasy truce, but on his terms. He held secrets that could destroy either faction completely, and he was willing to use them if needed. Through it all, Rourke remained an enigma. He moved like a shadow, speaking only when necessary, never revealing how much he knew or where his next move would come from. Those who tried to follow him found only traces, encrypted messages, mysterious meetings, and sudden disappearances of key players. His calm and collected presence hid a mind always working, calculating the best way to turn chaos into opportunity. The galaxy began to whisper about Earth's true nature. They said humans did not come to join alliances or follow rules. They came to rewrite them. To the conquered, it became clear that humanity's strength was not just in their technology or numbers, but in their unpredictability and their refusal to be boxed in. Humans played a different game altogether, and they played it well. As the pieces fell into place, the question left hanging in the air was no longer if the war would happen, but who would control the aftermath. And one thing was certain. With Jonas Rourke still in the middle, no one could afford to underestimate the human envoy, not as a diplomat, not as a warrior, and certainly not as the weapon disguised beneath the calm. The tension in the Grand Hall on Nelgaris Prime was nearly unbearable, as the representatives of the Zalari Imperium and the Varn Coalition took their seats once again. Months of distrust, sabotage, and secret betrayals had left both factions weakened and on edge. The air was thick with suspicion, and many expected that this summit would end not with peace, but with open hostility. Yet, in the midst of that silence, Ambassador Jonas Rourke remained calm, his face unreadable. The galaxy had come to expect violence from humans, or sharp threats masked as diplomacy. But what they did not expect was that the human envoy would strike with words, precise, powerful and impossible to ignore. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and measured, and it immediately commanded the room's full attention. He did not accuse. He did not shout. Instead, he simply laid out the truth, revealing everything he had uncovered in his quiet campaign. Corrupt generals who played both sides to line their own pockets, secret weapons deals made in the dark with mercenary groups, betrayals at the highest levels of both factions. His words were like stones dropped in still water, sending ripples through the stunned audience. No one could deny the evidence. The damage was clear, the cracks undeniable. Then, with cold logic, Rourke presented a solution. A plan that offered a path to peace, one that would allow both sides to regain stability and trust, to rebuild what had almost been lost. But this offer came with one firm demand. The Concord must recognize Earth as a full strategic partner, not a mere observer. This demand stunned the room. The alien delegates laughed openly at what they saw as arrogance from a young species, believing humans had no place among the galaxy's great powers. But before they could dismiss him, the station's orbital satellites, those ever-present guardians of space, went suddenly dark. A hush fell over the hall as screens flickered and alarms sounded quietly in the background. All communications with the outside universe were cut. Rourke's eyes remained steady as he pulled out a small device and pressed a single button. A code appeared on the central screen, a command code that could control every system linked to the station and its satellites. "This is not blackmail," he said calmly, his voice carrying both warning and reason. "It is a demonstration. We are already inside your networks. We could have ended this conflict quietly from the shadows, without a single shot fired. But instead, we offer peace, because peace is stronger than destruction." The room was silent, not with fear, but with the weight of realization. They understood that the human envoy was not bluffing. He held a power greater than armies, a power of knowledge, of control, and of patience. Slowly, the laughter stopped, replaced by uneasy glances. The Zalari ambassador shifted in his seat, his insectoid mandibles clicking softly. The Varn leader's compound eyes blinked rapidly as he considered the situation. The decision was clear. Resistance meant total destruction. Acceptance meant survival and the chance to rebuild. One by one, the delegates bowed their heads, submitting to the new order Rourke proposed. Earth would no longer be a sideline player, but a leader in the Amayabar galactic arena. As the summit closed, Rourke stood quietly, watching the delegates leave, his expression unreadable. This was only the beginning. By striking not with weapons, but with unyielding truth and power, he had reshaped the balance of the galaxy forever. The human diplomat was no longer just a peacemaker, he was the weapon unleashed. The galaxy would never again see humans the same way. And Jonas Rourke? He was already preparing for the next move. ChatGPT said, the tension in the Grand Hall of Nelgaris Prime was thick enough to cut with a knife as the delegates from the Zalari Imperium and the Varn Coalition gathered once more for the summit that could decide the fate of the galaxy. Both factions had been weakened, their trust in each other shattered after months of sabotage, secret betrayals, and whispered accusations. The air was heavy with suspicion, and the room buzzed quietly with the unspoken expectation that the meeting would end in open conflict. Everyone present was bracing for violence or at the very least harsh words that might escalate into war. Yet standing quietly at the head of the room, Ambassador Jonas Rourke remained calm and collected. His expression gave away nothing as he prepared to speak, and when he finally did, his voice was steady, measured, and filled with a power that instantly captured the attention of every alien in the room. Instead of threats or demands, he began by revealing the hidden truths he had uncovered over the past weeks. With cold clarity, he outlined a long list of secrets that shook the foundations of both factions. Corrupt generals who had betrayed their own people to fill their coffers, clandestine deals made in the shadows with mercenaries for secret weapons that could tip the scales of war, and betrayals that ran so deep no one had dared to imagine the full extent. The room fell silent as Rourke laid out this evidence one piece at a time, making it impossible for anyone to deny what had happened. The damage was clear, and the fractures within both sides were undeniable. Then calmly and without hesitation, Rourke presented a solution, an offer that could restore balance and prevent the destruction looming over the galaxy. His proposal was fair and balanced, designed to give both factions a way to rebuild trust and avoid further bloodshed. But the offer came with a firm, non-negotiable demand. The Galactic Concord must recognize Earth not as a distant observer, but as a full strategic partner. This demand shocked the room. The Zilari and Varn delegates laughed openly, dismissing the humans as arrogant newcomers who had no right to claim such a position among the galaxy's established powers. Just as the laughter began to swell, the unexpected happened. The station's orbital satellites, vital for communications, defense, and observation, suddenly went dark. Screens flickered and alarms hummed quietly, signaling a total blackout of external connections. A cold hush fell over the hall as the delegates realized what was happening. In his calm manner, Rourke pulled out a small device and pressed a button, revealing a single command code on the main screen. "This is not blackmail," he said, his voice steady and without threat. "It is a demonstration. We have already accessed your systems. We could have ended this conflict quietly without a single shot fired or a word spoken, but instead we offer peace because peace is stronger than destruction." The gravity of his words sank in. The delegates stared at the screen, understanding that Rourke's power was not in weapons or armies but in control, knowledge, and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to act. The laughter died away, replaced by uneasy silence and thoughtful glances. Even the proud Zilari ambassador shifted uncomfortably, while the Varn leader's eyes flickered with sudden respect mixed with fear. The choice was clear. Resist, and they risked total annihilation by a force they could neither see nor fight. Accept, and they would live to rebuild and perhaps find a fragile peace. Slowly, one by one, the delegates lowered their heads and gave their reluctant agreement. Earth was no longer just a distant planet to be ignored, but a rising power demanding its place at the table. As the summit closed and delegates began to leave, Rourke remained standing, quiet and watchful. He knew this was only the beginning. By striking not with weapons but with the undeniable force of truth and control, he had changed the galaxy's balance of power forever. The human diplomat was no longer a simple envoy. He had become a weapon unleashed, a symbol of humanity's unique strength. The galaxy would never again look at humans the same way. And Jonas Rourke was already preparing for what came next, ready to prove that sometimes the deadliest weapon is a mind calm enough to wield power without firing a single shot.